today's focus is on the fact that both Elon and Janet Yellen have sort of conspired to hammer the stock of Tesla. And so we wanted to sort of dive into both the stock of Tesla and Bitcoin. So we wanted to just dive into this to address how and why it is that the stock price is down and Bitcoin has been affected as well. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We also wanted to note to our Patreon supporters, your support is greatly appreciated and allows the channel to exist and prosper and is greatly appreciated. If you enjoy the show, please take time to like and subscribe. So the focus of our show today is the fact that Janet Yellen, who's the new Treasury Secretary, came out with some comments that affected Bitcoin's price, and that was followed on by Elon. So we want to look at both of them because I think that this is going to be long-term impactful on what happens kind of with both Bitcoin and Tesla. So the first thing that we wanted to review is I'm reading from a CNBC comment. It says Bitcoin's price descended further on Tuesday after U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen issued a warning about cryptocurrency. On Monday, Yellen called Bitcoin an extremely inefficient way of conducting transactions and warned about its use in illicit activity. She also sounded the alarm about the Bitcoin's impact on the environment. The token's wild surge has reminded some critics of the sheer level of electricity required to produce new coins. The world's most valuable digital coin has plunged 16% in 24 hours, sinking below 50,000 to trade as low as 45,000 at 4:10 a.m. Eastern, according to data from Coinmetrics. So we wanted to first review the fact that Ms. Yellen is formerly the Fed chair and went to Brookings for a couple of years and now has been selected and confirmed as the new Treasury Secretary. So in her roles of transitioning between the two jobs, she's actually extremely well regarded by the folks on the Fed side of the house because she used to be their boss and helped formulate the policy under which they're operating for many years. And then now that she's Treasury Secretary, she wields, I believe, a disproportionate amount of power because of having deep and broad relationships with sort of both sides of the house in terms of monetary policy, et cetera, that's going on in the United States and how that impacts the globe. So I believe that based on what Ms. Yellen said, part of her job is not necessarily to directly regulate both corporations and banks, et cetera, but the strategic thinking that she presents, I think, represents the logic stream of a large number of government officials, a team of which she's an important part of. So I believe that this is an important moment for Bitcoin because with Ms. Yellen coming out in this fashion, it basically tells the CEOs of the giant financial institutions that both the Fed and the Treasury Department do not look kindly on their plans with Bitcoin. So I think what this means then is those financial institutions will likely back away from Bitcoin, and then the corporations that interact with them sort of indirectly are exposed to the Fed and the Treasury Department, and they too, I believe, will be forced to back away from Bitcoin. And so what this then means then is we're in a situation right now where if you look at the price of Bitcoin, the price of the coin went from about 35,000 when Tesla bought in January to then almost 60,000 over this past weekend. And now we're back into the 45 to 48,000 zone, which is not that bad. The problem though is part of the reason why the Bitcoin accelerated in value so quickly was the sense that MicroStrategy's marketing efforts were starting to work with corporate financiers, and there would be a process where more and more large corporations would take large dollars and dump it into Bitcoin. And in a supply and demand situation, the Bitcoin value would rise dramatically. And so this whole narrative was actually rolling quite nicely as Tesla joined. So as Ms. Yellen came out with her perception of how things might work, I believe that it actually shifted the environment in terms of what the potential is for where Bitcoin goes. Can or will it go up? I believe it probably will, but would it have gone up a lot more if all manner of financial institutions and corporations were approved to own it? As we know, Square and Bitcoin are actually transacting in Bitcoin, but they're not holding/owning them. And so, there is this issue of, who will be allowed to deal with Bitcoin by the large entities like the Fed. And every bit of information that reduces the potential size of the marketplace, I think hampers the ability of this to continue to rise. So all of this said, what I think then is going to happen is that we're going to see a situation where we don't see accelerating values for Bitcoin as we have been over the last couple of weeks, driven by the fact that the hope for joining by large corporate entities and an institution in the Bitcoin buying is not going to happen. So the question is going to lurk for the next few days, which is, if we don't get those additional buyers potentially coming in, will current large holders/buyers start to liquidate in order to reduce their exposure of risk, or will they continue to accumulate? My estimation of things is that when you look at MicroStrategy stock being down $160, almost $200 today, it suggests that there's a concern that with their stock being a proxy on the value of Bitcoin, if we aren't going to see the accelerated growth in price that we've been seeing recently, then it's likely that their stock price will probably fall in line with what the equivalent value of Bitcoin would be. So for example, when MicroStrategy was at $1,300 a share, it was assumed that 48,000 was the equivalent of 48,000 on Bitcoin was the equivalent of a $1,300 stock price on the shares of MicroStrategy. What we've come to find, and based on an incredible comment I saw on the finance page of Yahoo, was that when you look at those numbers, what you're saying is that people are paying $9.5 billion for $3.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. So in theory, the corollary price to the current value of Bitcoin on the balance sheet of MicroStrategy should be neighborhood $5 billion, which in theory is between 4 and 5 billion in theory, would get it very close to the value of its Bitcoin it's holding. And in theory, that's something like a 500-ish, maybe even a $450 stock price. So I would say don't be surprised to see MicroStrategy continue to fall if we keep this logic in mind. So the other thing that we are looking at is, in terms of impacting the price of Bitcoin stock, is Elon's comments, which he tweeted, it kind of seems too high. And as you recall, he did the same thing with Tesla and was able to tank Tesla's stock price by 100 points in the process. Now we're in an interesting position where it reduces the amount of money that Elon and Tesla have made on Bitcoin, and it reduces Bitcoin stock price at the same time. And when you have the Yellen chaser to those comments, I just think it's a multi-layer downdraft for Bitcoin, Tesla, and MicroStrategy. So we're going to see how all this plays out. I have to say that I'm very surprised at the dip in Tesla's stock price to this extent. The reason is it is $1.5 billion spent from Tesla, and if they lost all of it, the hit to the balance sheet of the company is extremely limited, especially given how much cash they have. 7% was used on Bitcoin. So I believe that it's smart to be concerned about what's happening with those Bitcoins, but I also believe that we're definitely in a position right now where Tesla stock price has been discounted too severely, especially given how great operations are running, etc. So I'm really looking forward to a comeback of Tesla's stock price, because the dollar damage potential of Bitcoin exceeds what it should, and so therefore I'm expecting a nice pullback up. Now, the other piece of news that happened today that I'm looking forward to impacting things is the fact that there was the Fed share a statement that there isn't enough inflation to worry about in raising interest rates, and so therefore the other worry that was going on for the market and high-priced stocks like Tesla was, well, what about the potential for bond yields to rise, and therefore those higher yields will lead to a lot of money leaving equities and going over. And I believe that kind of the recovery of all these stocks this morning is a sign that there's the belief that the Fed's comments will be accurate and maintained. So in general, I think Tesla's too cheap right here. I think the company's doing great, and I think the numbers will show that. I believe that the Bitcoin hit is too great given the amount of dollars being used there, but it just seems like there's a discount premium right now on the stock relative to what's going to happen with their Bitcoin and potential negative impact on the balance sheet. So as we usually do, I wanted to close out today with our health tips. Don't forget your 25 leg lifts a day to strengthen your quad muscles, reducing potential knee issues. Also wanted to encourage you to consider a 3-5, a 5-2 or other diet relative to fasting and the beneficial mental and physical portions of that. Also wanted to encourage you to consider do not go to bed within 4 hours. Is ideal because all the food digests first, or minimum 2 hours, which allows your body to digest the food and you don't have acid rolling into your upper respiratory and other areas, potentially causing issues. Also wanted to encourage you prior to lovemaking to consider a very light meal like a salad because the blood flow to digest that food impacts blood flow to other areas that might be involved in lovemaking. I also, perhaps finally today, I just wanted to remind you about a 30 SPF or better to prevent skin cancer issues. And obviously exercise is a well-known ad for everybody, including myself. At any rate, want to thank you for taking time out to join us. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss German, au revoir French, Lehitro, Hebrew, Choda Hafez Farsi, Strazichen, Russian, Ni Hao Ma, Chinese, Konbanwa, Japanese, Hey Do, Swedish, G'day, our friends in Australia. And in Jamaica, we say, Nuff respect, walk, good man. Thanks for joining us and have a great day and bye.